So, good afternoon, everybody. I am really happy to be again with the group here, IIT Kharagpur, the FDT IKS group, and it is wonderful that as a regular intervention, so much of knowledge from the tradition is being shared in a national platform. Perhaps also a lot of people from other countries. But the main thing is to awaken the nation. The other people is a bonus. If we can awaken the nation, we have done our job. Because that's the work that many of us have been involved in for 40, 50 years. Um, of course, whenever I make a presentation on Vastu Shastra, I cannot start it without paying my respects to both my ancestors from the tradition, which is the Samskrita tradition, the yoga tradition, and the Vastu tradition. And more than anybody else, Sri Dharampal, who sort of challenged and awakened us 45 years ago and asked us to walk back into the tradition for a minimum of 10 years so that we would learn with a teacher and bring back that knowledge not as a personal consumption but to be made available to future generations in a way that would be appropriate. So it was a long journey. I was with Ganapati Stapati from 82 to 92, and in that period I worked with him, I studied with him, I was involved in many of his projects, and then I also did a lot of travel with him to various temples and to seminars and a variety of exposures. And then following that, after 92, I have been in the process of applying this knowledge in the building system because I'm an architect also, as well as teaching varieties of groups. In the last few years, my focus has been to teach architects because I think it has been a terrible short-sighted idea of education where all traditional knowledge was kept out of a very westernized, colonized sort of education where everything that was traditional was considered backward, useless, and thrown out of the window. So you had the baby and the bathwater being thrown out. Many of us had to struggle to find teachers who would be willing to teach us because as a result of this kind of attitude, what has also taken place in the traditional landscape, teachers had started becoming very jealous and very, I would say, paranoid about their knowledge and have closed in and they refuse to teach. So this is another huge problem that I encountered. And the Vastu Shilpa Shastras is a male-dominated field. I was the first woman to be introduced into it. So it took me several months of constant knocking on the door to convince Ganapati Stapati that I was a serious student. I was not there to do some, light-hearted hijacking of whatever he held as his personal knowledge. So I think it was a huge effort at one level, and it paid off because not only was I able to learn and transfer the knowledge to others, I was also able to assist him in bridging his location as a marginalized craftsperson into a design universe because many projects from new temples, etc., came through me to assist him into another international location. So I think some of this was the happy kind of collegiate relationship. So I would say that to me, to be able to teach this to other people requires a lot of personal search what am I going to say which will make sense? Because I can give you 20 slides and tell you these are the bits of knowledge that I have gathered. But how do you integrate it? Because that is the most critical thing. For me, the integration took 10 years. So, in 1 hour, what sort of integration can I offer you? In what way can you take it forward into your life as either practitioners or as teachers? And in what way are you going to assist younger minds to be able to receive this knowledge and see it as meaningful in a current context? So, all these things I have to work with before I give you a kind of a presentation. So, let's start. Start with the first slide.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Is this
So,
okay?
this is a
Shashi's
very
video?
a poem coming from the Vishwakarma tradition, where the Shilpi is another name for the Stapati or the Vishwakarma. They had in their handbook a very beautiful verse in Tamil, which I have loosely translated into English, where they are talking about pathway to divine experience. And this pathway has multiple characteristics. You can choose the path of music. You can choose the path of dance. You can choose the path of poetry, architecture, sculpture, and in fact, even mathematics, which is amazing. So, what the poem says is, in sound through music, in the body through dance, in words through poetry, in space through architecture, in form through sculpture, and in thought through mathematics. The devotee touches the divine. So each one of these is a path that a devotee can use. So today, I would go ahead and add some more things in agriculture through growing plants and trees and flowers. I think you can touch the divine. I would add food, cooking with great deal of attention, so that the food that you are offering is going to assist people in their search for good health, good sense of inner balance, etc. I think that too would be a path. Okay. So before we move on, what I want you people to understand is every aspect of this traditional knowledge, whether I take Vastu Shilpakala or I take Sangeeta, Natya, any one of the traditions, all aspects of reality are encompassed there. Your body, your mind, your breath, your skill, all of them are part of this search. Okay? The next one. Right. Here, this is my own personal journey. I have tried to place my personal journey into a framework, and frameworks are ideal whether it's a square or a triangle. I've used a triangle here. I'm saying that there are three sides to the search. One is the search of yoga. No tradition in any part of the country has actually left yoga out of their search. And yoga is not just hatha yoga. Yoga means a certain integrated way, holistic way of looking at life, where your body, mind, and spirit are in balance. Okay? The second thing is Ayurveda. Those of you who are aware of the tradition of Ayurveda will know that not only are you talking about food and medicine and the balance of your body, you're talking about seasons. What is appropriate food for what season? And then you're also talking about what is the kind of plant or tree or herb that you need to live a holistic life. So that will come into the purview of architecture. In my courtyard, in my little garden, in my balcony, in my terrace, What do I grow which will sustain my good food habits? Okay. Then finally, you're talking about Vastu. Vastu, literally Vastu and Vastu. Vastu means the space, Vastu means the object. So the relationship between space and object is critical to the way we harmonize our life. So how do I place things in my room? What is my sense, aesthetic sense? How do I locate order in my everyday living? All this is going to affect the kind of person I am, the thoughts that I have, the sleep that I'm going to get, the professional assistance I'm going to give to someone else. Okay? The next one. Yeah. So before going further, let me pay my respects and honor the traditional Shilpis, Sthapati. This is a very well-known person, not 1,000 years ago, but just a few decades ago. This is Vaidyanatha Sthapati, who was Ganapati Sthapati's father, and who was a great Sanskritam scholar. He was an astrologer, fantastic artist. And what is critical is these Sthapatis, including Ganapati Sthapati, worked with their hands. I'm an architect. I draw. But ask me to build a house with my hands. No, I can't. I don't have the training. The college never taught me. If at all I have learned something, today it is because I put out some effort into doing it for myself. I learned to sculpt. I learned to place brick on edge. So there is a certain skill that I have acquired. So this is a traditional Sthapati who comes from a long line of Sthapatis. It is said that it's an unbroken lineage coming from the builder of the Brigadeshwara temple in Tanjavur, the Rajaraja Perunthachar. So he's supposed to be in the part of that family. Okay? Next one. So let's look at some of his great works. This is something, those of you who know your Chennai, this place is known as the Gandhi Mandapam. It was opposite our college. So we did our sketching camps and all that there. It's a very important, intimate part of my childhood and adolescence. Next one. And those of you who have been to Tiruvannamalai, Ganapati Sthapati's father, Vaidyanatha Sthapati, was the Asthana Sthapati for Ramana Maharishi. And the sculpture, the most beautiful sculpture of Ramana, which is there in the ashram, which is almost alive. You go there and you can feel its presence, was made by him, crafted by him. The next one. This is another very well-known Sthapati. I'm only using two of them because I don't want to use information about people I don't know. This is the Ganapati Sthapati Sambandhi, who is from Ganapati Sthapati's family comes from Karaikudi, one part of their life, and the other part of their life is from the Tanjavur dynasty. This is from the Coimbatore area, Kovai district. Amritalinga Sthapati. He was also a great Sanskrit scholar and an astrologer and a great craftsman. Next one. As you can see from some of the samples, this is a single stone that he has made, Mani Mandapam. It's a composite pillar made out of one piece of stone. So he, with his team, has created this. The next one. Yeah. So before we move on to the actual subject matter, let me talk about something which is close to everybody's heart today. Every one of us is caught with this struggle because of what is happening in the world outside, in the political scenario, in the social scenario, in our education, etc. Everything is logic based. If you keep quiet, somebody is going to hit you with some logic. They're going to give you some statistical data, and you cannot even check it. Statistical data is the easiest to play around with and fool people. Okay. So immediately people will give you some statistical data saying 80% of this is this, 20% is like this. So you better believe it. Okay. So this is a very powerful tool that is being used today to keep people quiet. But there is an intuitive side, you see, each one of us has. And intuitively, I know when somebody is pulling my leg, or pushing me too far, or giving me some wrong theories, but I don't know how to argue with it. Intuitively, I know that there's something deeply wrong with what this person is doing, which is across the board, every politician today. You know that they are taking you for a ride, right? Intuitively, you know. But they apparently, logically seem to be telling you that what they are doing is right for all humanity, not just for themselves. Finally, they are helping themselves to the Gajana only. They're putting their hands into the kitty and taking the money, finally. But the way they are stating it upfront, with a complete lack of integrity, is so apparently logical that you're defeated. You don't know how to deal with it. But the fact is, the world has both aspects. One aspect, which is the linear, logical aspect, and the other, the knowledge that it's a cyclical time. That you will sometimes come back to the same place, sometimes minimally raise yourself from the same place. But there is a progression going on, which cannot actually be measured. And instinctively, intuitively, I know when something is in place, when it is in alignment, and when it is off alignment. Even my own body, there are times when you know that this is not the right time for me to be saying anything serious to anybody. Because within you, everything is out of order, out of whack. And it's better not to open your mouth. Intuitively, you know that. Even if there's a huge pressure that you have to perform, I know I can't perform. Right? So, all these are parts of each one of us. Today's world is pushing you, saying that only that which is visible, only that which can be measured, only that which is rational is real. Everything else is unreal. There is a huge pressure on you right now not to give any credibility to that part of you which is not measurable, which is intuitive, which is mystical. The mystical is considered to be completely foolish. So there is a struggle going on in the current generation of young people who are bombarded with this rational statistical data all the time. And there is a part of themselves which is their inherent humanistic, sensitive, mystical side, which is being oppressed, sometimes even broken. Okay? So, science and technology. Give me proof. What is the empirical data? Tell me this will last for 100 years. Rubbish like that. Nobody can promise any of that. But this kind of debate is going on. And S&T, science and technology, the only science and technology. Dalton's atom is the only atom. Our traditions have spoken about the idea of the Anu and the Parmanu. The scale measurement in the Vastu Shilpa Shastra starts with the Paramanu. Was it that just because Dalton's name has been given to the atom, no other society, no other culture, no other people understood subatomic particles? They didn't understand that which cannot be perceived. The intangible, the imperceptible has always been part of every culture. And people have actually worked with it. There is healing that is done with imperceptible energies, and so on. Next one. So today, the pressure is for us to bring together these two aspects. I'm not saying you have to be irrational. Rationality has its place, like the famous statement of Swami Vivekananda, when somebody asked him about the whole thing of prana, and he said the power of the mind and prana is very apparent, it is intangible, it is powerful, but that which is not rational to the mind, do not accept it. It also has to make sense. Otherwise, a lot of people will be playing around with, oh, I have a mystical experience, and pushing people around. So you have to have a balance between that which is measurable and that which is immeasurable. How are you going to locate these two in your own world of reality? Okay, next one. And this is very important when you want to look at the subject of Vastu Shastra. Next one. Right. So this whole concept of the measurable and the immeasurable goes into what is known as Parampara Siksha. Any kind of Parampara Siksha. Before I go into the Parampara Siksha of Vastu Shilpa Shastra, most of you will be able to comprehend the Parampara Siksha of Sangeeta. Most of our families have taught us as children a little bit of Sangeeta. We were brought up with music. My grandmother was a great Carnatic musician. So 5:30 in the morning, the tambura, what we call tambura, the tanpura, will be started. You could hear the sound. 5:30 in the morning, she would be singing to herself. And then the students started coming. Because when we were children, school was not such a big deal. You could manage without, killing yourself with study. So early morning, 5:30 to 6, she would be doing her own sadhana. After that, the littlest of the children, Sarali Janta Varise, will go on till about 6:37. Then we'll get ready and go off to school. And then the college going, older girls and boys, they will come and they'll be doing Alankaram and Geetam and so on. And then all the house will be emptied. We were a joint family. At any time, 15 to 20 people. And then by 10 o'clock, the house is emptied of all the youth and the young, little children. Then the older women and men would study with her. They would sit with her and they will learn the Kirtana, Alapana and all that. So there was that musical training that was going on. So here, there is an actual training. You learned to culture your voice. You learn the scales. So that is very visible, right? But what is invisible? You learned to understand music from inwardly. You located the Rishabha in your body. Where does the Rishabha locate in your physical body? What happens to the breath when you stay with the Panchama, which is in the middle of your body? Shadjama is the lowest Shadjama and the highest Shadjama, and the Panchama in the middle. So when you stayed with a long Panchama, something took place, some vibration took place in your body. So this is imperceptible, immeasurable. So simultaneously, this relationship between that which can be measured, that which can be trained, skills that can be acquired, have to be done. That is part of the what they call riyaz, sadhana, we call it sadhagam in Tamil. So this has to go on, irrespective of your age and irrespective of the number of years you have been trained. You have to sit down and do your akara. Right? On the other side, there will be this inner culturing that takes place. where you make this knowledge your own. It gets embodied and embedded. Okay. So the Parampara Siksha, both aspects, opening you out to your measurable, practical, linear progression, where you are better than you were 2 days ago, better than you were a year ago, and so on. And opening yourself out to a mystical kind of inner culturing, where the sound started speaking to you in a different way, in a different language. Okay? So the students of sculpture, what did they do? A very young boy. It was open only to the males, as I told you. A very young boy, 5 or 6 years old, probably is going to school, and in the evenings or early mornings, sitting with the sculptors in the yard. And usually the yard is attached to the house. And he's running around, bringing the charcoal for them to mark, taking their chisels for sharpening, watching them marking, watching them drawing, watching them chipping. And while they're doing it, they're probably having a conversation with that child and training the child in a very subtle manner. The language of Vastu Shilpa Shastra. And then the child, as he grows up, becomes an adolescent and starts doing the rough chipping, tracing it and doing the plumb line and so on. And in the evenings, the teacher, the older students are discussing the text, the Vastu Shilpa Shastra, and listening. He's paying attention to the text. There are the Samskrita texts, and then there are the local language texts. Then the third thing that they are doing is traveling, going to other places where the Shilpis have created something, a monument, a house, a temple, etc. And they are watching, they are learning, they are breaking the system into its components so that they know how it's being put together. So they are understanding the science and technology. So all these are part of the Parampara Siksha. It's not like this endless thing of information gathering that we are doing today, which is a terribly damaging system because there is no space for experiencing. There is no space for this other mystical side to start developing. Okay? Right. These are the shlokas I have written. So these shlokas are very important for you to look at. Okay? Since I'm watching on the phone, let me quickly see which shloka this one is. Sthapatihi. Okay. Yeah. So this is the qualities of the sthapati. Okay? A sthapati is a person who is capable of understanding the space, the form, assembly, and the team. Okay? So not only has he to be trained in the physical system, he also has to be a good manager. How does he manage the team? For example, if you look at the Tanjavur Brihadishwara temple, at any given time, 15 to 20,000 people were working there, which includes all the supporting systems also, like the blacksmith who was looking after the tools. So to manage all of the labor, to create a meaningful sort of shop floor reality, to feed them, to look after them if they have had somebody has cut their hand, this, that, and the other, small physical ailments, then bigger complaints, dealing with the waste. Human waste would have been quite a big amount. So all this comes under the purview of the sthapati. Okay? So the sthapati is somebody who has to know his subject. He ought to have traveled, you see. He should be well versed in science, mathematics, and history. Why history? Because he has to understand the way in which the form, the skill, the building technology, all of it, how it has evolved. And for those of you who don't know this, traditionally, the Vishwakarma community, they were actually they were a free group. They were not like in Western countries. They were not like slaves. They had their own guild, craftsmen's guild. So in the guild, they worked as a team. So when there was a king who was a good sponsor, who took care of his workforce and who also paid them well, they would move to that kingdom as a family. That's why they have moved all over the country. Okay? There is also the strange one which says he has to be physically perfect. The idea of perfection is very critical here. We are not talking about beauty. It's a lot of hard work, you know. Ganapati Stapati used to tell me, the hammer and chisel that my grandfather used, I cannot even lift it. So it was a hell of a lot of hard work. You had to be physically very fit. Okay? So that was very critical. This person also has to be dharmic. We are talking about huge sums of money, which doesn't belong to anybody. It's the community's money. It's coming from the entire community offering towards the building of the temple. That has to be taken care of by this Stapati. So he has to have this head straight. This is not like today contractors are putting 20% into their pockets even before the work starts. It's not like that. Okay. So this attitude of the builder has been stressed very, very strongly in the tradition. Okay. Visharadaha. Okay. There are many more words that come from other texts also. Tantrajnaha. He has to have many skills. Okay. And then he has to have read text. He has to understand religion. Because many of the temples and the sculptures will have symbols of that particular faith. So this person has to understand. Okay. Next one. This is which one? Amatya. Okay. So here we are talking about mortals and immortals. What a beautiful way of putting it. So you're talking, yeah, which is the way in which the texts have separated the two, classified them as Devalaya and Manushya. So where the mortals and immortals can reside in harmony or in peace or in joyousness is considered to be the basis of Vastu. Okay? This is known as Vastu. Vastu is the object, Vastu is the space. Earth consists, yeah. So the next one is really talking about the four classifications. Within this system, first is the earth itself. Bhumi itself is a Vastu. Then you have temples, Devalaya or Prasada. Then you have the Yana. Yana is the moving vehicles. And then Shayana. Shayana is a broad classification. It doesn't mean only beds. It means all furniture. So you have these three systems. Temples, which will be slash residences. So all built forms, all chariots and other moving vehicles, and then all furniture. And then Bhumi. Bhumi is the Prathama Vastu because everything rests on it. So this is very important. This is once more all very deeply interconnected. Like I was telling you, it's an integrated system. So every person who is building in this system has to be aware that finally it has to rest on the earth. And I'll tell you why it is so important. You have to look at the bearing capacity of the soil. You cannot put up any structure randomly in any piece of earth. Today, of course, it's being sent for soil analysis. Traditionally, they had to understand the bearing capacity of the soil before they dug a foundation. Okay, so everything, how much can it be placed on to the earth? How much can it sustain? How much can it handle? Okay, next one. Prasadini, yeah. So the houses or the temples, the buildings are known as Vastu. And they endlessly have a relationship with the Vastu, which is the Bhumi. And that is why these sites are called dwelling sites. Okay. The early ancients have called these the dwelling sites. So, I mean, today, everywhere, wherever there is vacant land, people are building. But if you look at this particular shloka, it is a very important shloka. What is the relationship between the environment and the built form? Usually, buildings were in settlements. And the settlement had access to water, good climate, good soil, and enough trees and plants that will sustain their lifestyle. So all of them are interrelated. That is why river banks and on the banks of lakes and so on. Yeah. So this is talking about the team. We have now talked about their traditional learning, the Parampara Siksha. Now we are saying, who is the team? Who are the parts of the team? Because today, as an architect, it's a faceless team I'm working with. I just put out bills of quantities and get contractors and choose one of them. Random, it's completely random. And then I give the drawings and they do it. I do some site supervision. We are not talking about that here. We are talking about an interconnected system. Starting from the sourcing of the material to the preparation of the design to the building with all its complexity to the finish and to the handover. The entire scheme is within the purview of one group. They are taking care of all parts and frequently they also come back to maintain, repair and maintain. So here you are saying there are 4 types of people in the group. Yeah. The Sthapati is the main head chief architect or the head of the group. He has to be competent to make the building, design its details, and be able to achieve the final product. The Sutragrahi, who comes below the Sthapati, who is his first assistant, may be his son or his senior Sishya. This is a person getting prepared to become a Sthapati. So he knows everything that the Sthapati knows, but it's still slightly unformed. He's probably quite young, but 18, 20. Okay? He has to follow the lead of the Sthapati. He has to understand all the things that the Sthapati is teaching him or telling him to do. And he has to take the instructions and make it happen in the site. Okay? The next is the Takshaka. Takshaka is a person who can take smaller bits, place it, break up the entire structure into smaller components. Okay? So this is very, and he's also the person who does the measuring along with the Sutragrahi. And here they're saying he has to be of a happy disposition. What a lovely statement. Because you're actually now bringing in the other side. that immeasurable side. Because this work can be tough, because we are now talking about somebody who's going to be lifting pieces, lifting loads, okay? Cutting, lifting, moving, etc. So the person who has to enjoy doing this, it's probably going to be very tough on his body. He should be capable of also assisting the person who's doing the joining. Those of you who know about it, stone constructions in the early years did not have any mortar. They were actually placed on in what is known as a self-weight system. It's heavy enough to just stay above. And in spite of so many earthquakes, so much lightning, so much rain, they have stayed. Not a single crack. And most of them don't have any mortar. So the bonding is based on the way they are joined together. The surfaces one to the other. What is the kind of joint that you're creating so that they can stay together without moving apart, without cracking, without falling? Okay. And then the person who is at the next level, the takshaka, is the one who is working with stone and brick and so on. Then the vardaki is the one who is joining the pieces of wood. And those of you who are familiar with the wood construction in the west coast of South India, as well as in the northeast area, Nepal and so on, they don't use, traditionally they don't use any metal at all. No nails, no nothing. They only work with joints, perfect joints. It's an assembly. Okay? So that requires enormous skill and arithmetical calculation to be able to join everything. Like in Kerala, if you watch them making it, everything is placed on the ground, made on the ground, and then they put it on top of the walls, and when they place the last piece, it just locks. It's a remarkable experience. And perfectly, it will just lock. Okay? So this capacity is not just one person, it's a team. Starting with the Stapati and then Sutragrahi, then you have the Takshaka and then the Vardaki. All of them are working together in a perfect synchronized kind of manner. Okay? So now we are moving into what we are calling energies. Again, abstract. There are energies in the environment. That which you can feel and that which are beyond your capacity to feel or measure. Like 100 years ago, if you told somebody you can take an X-ray using a certain kind of frequency from the atmosphere to take a print of your internal organs, they would have laughed at you. But it is a frequency which is there. So many kilohertz, they say now, when you look at a radio station. They are tapping into energies or certain vibrations, frequencies from the environment, which when tapped into in a particular way, can be utilized for our experience on the earth. So similarly, the tradition has looked at energies in the earth that are existing and which can actually assist in your life, in your lifestyle. And to understand this energy, they have created what is known as a Vastu Purusha Mandala. There's a lot of hanky-panky on this. If you go into a website today, they will tell you some terrible stuff. Put your door on the head of the Vastu Purusha and you will die, and feet and you will lose your children. You know, rubbish like that. Purusha Mandala is actually a symbolic representation of the energy of the earth. It is said, there is a story that Vastu Purusha was an energy that came out of one of the, in Indraloka, when they were doing a yaga, this energy came out of the the sacred fire. And he was a powerful energy, and Vastu Purusha was utilized for a various level of tasks there. And then, as is the truth, a story of every one of our myths, he went out of control. He started becoming an asura. Instead of helping and healing and assisting, he started destroying. And then the various devas got terribly anxious and ran to Brahma. So Brahma said, "Don't worry. 44 of you and me, 45 of us, let us pin him down onto the earth, on his face, and sit on his back, and keep him captive." So the story goes on that Vastu Purusha was pinned down onto the earth with his head down, face down, and sat on his back. So each of the locations on the body of the Vastu Purusha is a name of a devata. Savitri, Savitri, Indra, Indrajat, Indrajit, Indrajat, so on. And with Brahma in the center. So there are 45 deities who are supposed to be located on it. And of course, you have this classic picture of Vastu Purusha with his head towards the northeast and feet towards the southwest. But this is only one aspect. There's a Sthiravastu and there's a Charavastu. Sthiravastu is when he is constantly in this location, normally with his face down, and then he awakens. So if you look at the Panchangam, it will tell you all those days in which Vastu Purusha is awake. That is when you're supposed to start your building activity. But seasonally also he is moving. That is the Charavastu. Okay. So this quality of space and time, cyclical quality of space and time, is again being replicated on the earth. It's a cosmology and it's also a earth reality. Right. So then here we come into the technology. To create a structure, astonishing structure of this size, what did you need? You needed your all your implements. You needed the stone. You needed your brick. You needed your metal work. Right? Everything has to be there in place. So how did this get? Let me just read out some of those things. I can't see now because I'm on a phone. I'll just read it out to you. Yeah. The precinct is 800 into 400 feet. That's a huge space. The height of the Vimana is 208 feet. 2 kilometers, square kilometers area, the material was stacked. Okay. You needed metal for building, which means your chisel, you need your sharpening tools, you need your polishing tools, you need the charcoal for the marking, and so on. Even today, there is a small village adjacent to Tanjavur called Karuntattankudi. Karuntattan means blacksmith. This is where the blacksmiths used to live. I have watched in Sapati's yard. It takes, each chisel becomes blunt after being used for something like half an hour or 45 minutes. It has to be reforged and sharpened again. So can you imagine the level of work that was necessary to keep your tools handy, right? And of course, there is this idiotic kind of theory that is floating around that they built a ramp 3 kilometers long. I already told you that the structure is created without any mortar. Okay. So when you have a mortar-free structure and it is like this, and you place a ramp against it, it will collapse. And you're talking about the height of 208 feet. So your ramp ultimately has to be 208 feet tall. Can you imagine? The kind of scaffolding that you'll need for it, the kind of revetments that you'll need for it, it is an impractical solution. What they actually did, I have watched them building a stone temple. They have something called the Sara Kat Suvar, which is a scaffolding wall that is built around the stone temple using mud with few stones, and that wall goes up along with your main building, because this is a free structure, you see, without mortar. So it needs stability until the last pieces are placed. It is an unbalanced structure. So you have a mud wall holding it in place, and the middle, which is the Garbhagriha, is filled with sand. So that you have a platform 3 times the size of the Garbhagriha on which the material is stacked. And as the building goes up, you have a spiral staircase going around this Sarakatasuvar on which the smaller pieces are carried. The larger stones go up with the structure. Okay, so that is the way these buildings are actually traditionally built. All right, Kailasanatha temple. This is another one with 101 crazy theories going around, saying that human beings did not make it, extraterrestrials came and did it. This is the kind of ways in which we take away the power and the skill of our own ancestors. The assumption being that we don't have the capacity to do it, that somebody else from outer space had to come and do it for us. The reality is that the Parampara Siksha is what allows them to be able to do it. Parampara Siksha and its training makes it possible for them to be able to look at the whole movement from the top to the bottom and be able to do something rhythmic and in relationship in any kind of context, the smallest to the largest. So I have a few more. Do you think I have enough time or should we stop here? We have some time? Okay, at least 10 minutes. Let me just finish this. There is a theory.
About 25 minutes, Shashiji. We have about 25 minutes more to conclude the session.
Yeah, but you want to open it out for question answers, right?
Yes, yes.
So I will take another 10 minutes, finish as many slides as I can.
Sure, sure.
And then leave it open. Okay?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So the next one is, there is a theory here, Bhogadyam, Sukhadarshanam and Ramya. This is a shloka coming from the Mahabharata, where there is a statement by the Asura architect. There are two architects that they have talked about in the tradition, Vishwakarma and the other one who is Maya. Maya is supposed to be the architect of the Asuras, Vishwakarma the architect of the Devas. Okay, so Maya, who actually, this is straddling both the Itihasas. So you have Maya, who is the father of Mandodari, Ravana's father-in-law, who comes out of the forest when they start burning the forest, Arjuna and Krishna, and says, please protect me, save me, I will do whatever I can to assist you. And he's supposed to have created the Maya Sabha. And so they ask him, what is it that you can do? What is your idea of traditional Vastu Shilpakala? So he says, Bhogadyam, Sukhadarshanam and Ramya. Which means, Bhogadyam means usefulness, that which is utilitarian, Sukha Darshanam is your the capacity to create aesthetic pleasure, and Ramya, which is an inner delight. So I can create structures which are capable of all three. Okay, the next one. So here you have, how do I create something beautiful without getting stuck with standardized units? How can I be creative? Then you have the relationship between philosophy, symbolism, and skill. The greatest, I would say, is the Nataraja, the form of the Nataraja. So here you have a variety of symbols. Every aspect of the form of the Nataraja has a symbolic meaning. The basic is that in the dance, all creation is happening. So you have sound from one side and light from the other. Then in the movement, time is being created. And then below the feet of the Lord is Abhasmaran, that is wrong knowledge. Okay. Avidya. He is holding avidya with his power so that it can always be controlled. Okay. This symbolic language is now composed into an aesthetic form. And the aesthetic form has measurements. Every part has measurements there. Its arithmetic rigor is something else. Every toe, every finger, they have a relationship to the rest of the body. The total body dimension is 1:9. The face into 9 is the entire body. Okay, this is Navatada. So the next one is one of the most magnificent Natarajas. This is near Kumbakodam in a small village called Koneri Rajapuram. Exquisite piece, very large. With the pedestal and the Prabhavali, it is about 8 to 8.5 feet. And talking about something like this being made in the 9th century, kind of materials that you needed to be able to achieve it, the size of the kiln in which such a large piece can be made is remarkable. How did they manage to do it? It would have been outside of the town because the heat generated would have been awesome. So you have 1 ton of metal, and it's what is known as Panchaloha, which is a combination of copper, brass, lead, gold, and silver. Brass itself is a combination of tin and copper, as you know. So you have all these metals, Panchaloha, and then you need to have beeswax to make the first mold. Then you need clay to wrap it in. And then you need the firewood to burn and the coal to burn. The size of the kiln, 3 to 4 times this. So we are talking about a 40-foot kiln. Remarkable achievement. Okay, so not only are we talking about aesthetic sensibilities, we are talking about a very advanced technology and understanding of metallurgy. Because to be able to smelt each one of these metals requires different temperatures. And they are still doing it in small crucibles in Kumbakonam. Those of you who are interested, please go and watch it. So you have then shlokas which are talking about building construction has various aspects. So this technology, the next one, go into the next one. Tatra kramena bahudha dharani pariksha. Yeah. So building construction, you have to understand how to select a site. How do you fix the cardinal direction, which was very critical in the traditional system? Then you have to create auspicious locations of roads and VTs. Then you needed a dimension which is appropriate, that is known as Ayadi. And then the details of the building. All of this has to be done. So this is a lot of learning. Apart from the mystical side, you had an actual physical learning system. Then, this is a beautiful summing of the whole thing. It is not possible to build a house intelligently without the help of these four people: the Stapati, the Paddaki, the Sutragrahi, and the fourth. Who is the fourth fellow? Takshaka. They are needed because they know how to assemble, they know how to keep it, do it properly, and of course, finally, you have to make them happy, which means pay them correctly. It was a very important statement. No, you didn't shortchange the fellows who put their blood and sweat out there. Okay. So I'll just quickly go over some other aspects which are very important. You have the alignment of the body, the prana, and the mind. Similarly, there is a necessity to align the built form. It is said that a building which has not been aligned properly, that means the energetic space and the physical body of the building has to be aligned perfectly. When it is not, it can cause a lot of health issues. Okay. Next one. Similarly, balancing the space, which means, like in Ayurveda, they call it balancing of the dosha. How do you balance open space, built form, lighting, darkness, aesthetic elements, movement of air, winter, summer? All these are balanced, and we are not talking about central air conditioning, nothing of that sort. We are talking about the material and the built form having the capacity to keep you comfortable and happy through the year in your particular geographical context. Okay. And then what are the plants that you will have which will be part of your cooking? Today you have landscape consultants coming and creating these pretty things where nothing is of use. I have seen some pretty landscapes where not even a flower will be used. You can't even put it for your puja because it has no fragrance. So you talked about a context where everything is actually integral to creating a good lifestyle. And then, of course, the most maligned aspect of our tradition. Wherever you go, the next slide. Wherever you go, the anti-Hindu movement is basically telling you that puja and ritual is backward, blind faith, foolishness. And we have completely sidelined some of the most powerful ways in which you can actually relate to the immeasurable and the energies that are floating around that you cannot speak to directly. You can only speak through accessing energies that are higher than you and allowing them to flow through you, which is why you do this avahanam. When you do a puja, you allow another energy to enter you. You empty yourself of your own sense of self. Let this energy speak through you and transform the environment. And believe me, it can transform the environment. I am actually working with clients who are deeply unhappy and who come to me for what I call Chikitsa Vastu, where I assist them into touching this immeasurable energy within themselves so that their space can be transformed. And this is the basis of puja and ritual. And I believe today we have to bring back the sensibility into each of our lives. All right? So I stop with this and open it out for questions. I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me, Shashiji?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah,
Tell me.
Just stop the screen sharing so that you have a better visibility. So it is 3:16. We can take questions for 12-14 minutes. And Alka ji
Yeah.
has a question. Yes.
And if you can repeat the question, because frequently I can't hear the participants. Like I told you, I'm on a small phone.
Yeah, I had a question from your just last but one slide. It was regarding Ayurveda.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't relate the that slide with the topic you are talking about. So just comment on that or explain it once again.
I was mainly talking about Ayurveda as an important element in your built form. Like traditionally, things that are in your kitchen and things that are growing in your garden is what you use to heal yourself. So, what do you grow? What are the trees and plants and herbs that are appropriate for your environment, for your climate, and for your health? Okay.
Any other question? Dr. Pankaj.
Shashikala ji, namaskar. Can you hear? Shashikala ji, can you hear?
Can you restate it, please?
नहीं, namaskar. बहुत अच्छा आपका सेशन था. Your session was very good. And I have only one doubt. In the Vastu, people say the northeast facing is good. Bedroom should be in this direction, that direction, many things. But, you know, I do not know, are there any scientific evidence for that? So, some people say it is more of new shagufa by the builders that it is now Vastu compliant or something like that. But the way you mentioned about those invisible energies, when you were sharing about the puja and ritual, so I believe that there must be some truth. So if you can throw some more light on this aspect of Vastu, that is it really true, then how can a scientific mind can believe on that? So this is my question. Thank you.
You're talking about the location of facilities and the directions, right?
He's asking about the scientific validation, scientific evidence with regards to the directions. For example, northeast facing is good for puja and so on and so forth. Ishan Kon, what is the scientific validation for these claims?
This is my problem, no? Which is why I showed you that slide about science and technology and mysticism. The idea of science today seems to be only the European idea of science. There is a whole traditional idea of science. And I'm not talking about only Indian tradition, everywhere in the world. And that is known as cosmology, where there is an understanding of space, time, and energy and direction, where each of them has a specific quality. Whichever tradition you go into, whether you take a Greek system or the Hindu system, there is a meaning to the south. Why is it called Yama here? In the Greek tradition also it's called Pluto, who is considered to be the lord of death. So each one of these directions, it's a big subject. I don't think I can answer you in 2 minutes, but there is a certain meaning to directions that is part of all the traditions. Like in Egypt, if you look at it, On the eastern banks of the Nile, eastern bank of the Nile are all the temples, and the tombs are on the western bank. All of them, without a doubt. That's because the east is considered to be the direction of knowledge and awakening. So you place the temples there. West is considered to be the direction of the darkness, the night time, and the mystical side. Varuna, that's the direction of Varuna. Varuna, as you know, is a Vedic god. He is considered to be the lord of the mystical awakening. Experiential meanings. The only way you can test it out is actually locating yourself in those places. I would suggest you work with it for yourself, because it is considered, Feng Shui has the same movement. It's talking about the metal and the element in each of the locations. So this is something that the ancestors have learned. Fire. But in the southern hemisphere, there will be some shift. So some of these things you'll have to start actually studying it from an experiential aspect, rather than trying to say you want. Hello. Yeah. It was a sudden glitch. Okay. So you'll have to actually look at this whole thing at one level as an experiential reality, at another level that this is a wisdom that is coming from the past. And it is a science of a different kind, like I told you earlier. It's an experiential science. Anubhava, as they call it, Swanubhava. And it's worthwhile for you to check it out for yourself. Place your bed. Place your bed in different directions. I always tell my clients, locate your bed. Sleep with your head on the north, which is considered to be a no direction. And see what happens to your dreams.
Hello, ma'am. This is Yash. It was a wonderful presentation. Although I have one doubt, ma'am, does our ancient texts of Kama Sutra and Agama Shastra talk about architecture and ways of living? If so, then can you just throw some light on the subject? Kama Sutra and Agama Shastra.
No, I don't get your question. Are you saying that the architecture that's spoken about in Kama Sutra, where does it locate? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm asking, does these two documents talk about architecture and ways of living? If they do, then can you throw some light on it?
He's asking that texts of Kama Sutra and Agama Shastra, do they talk of ways of living and architecture? the texts of Kama Sutra and Agama Shastra, do they mention architecture and ways of living? If yes, please throw some light.
See, lot of text will say lot of supporting data. Like Surya Siddhanta has a lot of data on architecture and how to build a sacred sacrificial fire, the Vedic altar, the proportions, the size of the brick, and so on. It's not important for you to now start looking at each text and what it's saying, because it will be in its own context. Like Ayurvedic texts are saying something specific. It is for the technology and the teaching and the preparation of a particular kind of vaidya. But there will be some data on lifestyle, herbs, etc., in other texts. These are only supporting things. You shouldn't get into, like I have read an Ayurvedic text which talks about how to build a hospital. Very interesting. I mean, data is very interesting. But how do I locate it in the Vastu text?
Okay, we can take one more question if there is any. Okay, Dr. Deoskar. One last question, Shashiji.
Yeah.
Namaste, madam. Thank you for the wonderful discourse. Madam, you mentioned in your talk that soil is the first element. The soil is the first element, is the first vastu, you said. Soil, bhumi. Bhumi is the first
Yeah.
vastu. Are the remaining four Pancha Mahabhut are the remaining vastus, or anything made which is tangible will be considered as a vastu? Anything that is tangible used for sculpture will be termed as a vastu. Or the Pancha Mahabhut, the remaining four besides soil will be the vastus only.
I'm not able to get the gist of the question.
His
Can
question is,
somebody
yeah. He said that he says that you mentioned that Prithvi, soil, is the first vastu, and do the other four components of Pancha Mahabhuta are also vastu? Are they also vastu as Prithvi or soil is? Or is anything
Yes,
that
yes.
is made out of anything
Yes,
is a
they're all
vastu?
They're all vastu, but bhumi is the pratama because everything is placed on it. Your built form is placed on it. So the akasha, all the other tattva, they have their own location in the Vastu Purusha Mandala. They're also vastu.
Yes, one last. Small one, last.
Namaskaram. What is the scale that is used to decide the Vastu Shastra? Like, what is the center point? Like, is it with respect to the universe or something? Because east and west are according to the sunrise and sunset or the movement of the earth. So, what is the scale that we are using for the center, the Vastu Shastra?
Scale.
Like the point of
What is
reference,
it?
actually. Point of reference in the universe, something like that.
Are you talking about the measurement scale?
No, I'm talking about the point, like point in the universe that we are taking as a reference to say that this is east west. Is it according to the solar, like the sunrise and the sunset, or just on Earth, or according to the universe in a bigger scale of the cosmos?
This is, like I told you, this is known as cosmology. And the fact of the 45 devatas coming to the earth and locating themselves and creating certain meanings in each of the directions. Okay. So most of the devatas are actually the Vedic devatas, not later on. So each of them has a particular meaning. In fact, it says the center, the Brahmasthana, Brahmaviti, and then there is the Devaviti, then the Manushaviti, and then the Paishachaviti. These are the concentric spaces. Okay. So it is said that the Paishachaviti, which is the outermost, has the devatas who are with their consorts and who are mounted on their vahana. So it means that they are, you have to now break the symbol to get to the meaning. All the outer spaces, which is, and when we are saying Vastu Purusha Mandala, we are saying any space that is enclosed or limited. You can't just take a 100-acre space and say this is Vastu Purusha Mandala. I have created a site for a building, for a village, for a temple, whatever. That site, when you have drawn the limits, then you create these concentric spaces, starting with the central point, which is the Bindu or the Brahmasthana. All right. The Brahmasthana is generally seen as that which has no dimensions. It's a point. So it's considered to be very powerful. And then you have the Brahmas Pada or the Brahmaviti. That is a space. It's considered to be also very powerful. And Brahma is without any ornaments, without any clothes, completely naked, fully in his own power. And then you have the Devaviti, where the gods are clothed but without ornaments, without consorts, without vahana. So they are in their pure form. Again, very energetic. And then you have the Manushaviti, where you have the devatas with, it's a lot more play, you see. So it's energy which is very happy energy. That is where they recommend human habitations to be in a settlement. And then finally you have the Paishachaviti. Paishacha is not a Pishacha. It is not a negative thing. Paishacha means closest to the human. The others are all devatas. They are closest to the human. And this is where you have your open spaces, you can have your workshops, and in settlements, this is where they recommend the marketplaces, where human interactions can happen. The gateways, the water bodies for fun, and so on. Right? So all of them have certain meanings. It's a very big subject. It's not something I can cover in 10-15 minutes. If you're really serious and you want to learn, let me know. We teach regularly. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Shashikala ji,
you.
once again
you.
for being a part of our FTP in the third sequel. It's an honor to have you each time, and I'm sure that the session was very, very pragmatic and it has opened a lot of insights. And the most beautiful thing was the intangible, connecting with the intangible. That's so important. And even that is its own science. That is a science, not what just West thinks is a science, empiricism. Thank you, Shashikala ji, and all strengths and thank you so much. Prayers. Thank you for joining us.